Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining me again today. I am, as always, Rich Gibbons from Cloudy with a Chance of Licensing, and today, back once again, the always excellent Nathan Miller. So thank you very much for joining me again, Nathan.
Back again. Thank you for having me after the first time.
No problem. It's always great to have you. So today we're going to talk about Microsoft MACC agreements, the Microsoft Azure Consumption Commitment. Now, these, for me, until relatively recently, only a few people ever really mentioned them, and it was a bit of a, not a secret, but it wasn't like a massive thing. And then maybe within the last 12 months, I think everyone seems to have one. They're all over the place. Everyone's talking about them, asking questions. So I think, as with most things, starting at the beginning is probably the best idea. So with a MACC agreement, and I like to put this bit on you. It's always makes it easier for me. What's the kind of quick overview of what a MACC agreement is?
Before I go into that, it would be remiss of me to say that we are discussing the return of the MACC. But on it's the Azure, also the Microsoft Azure Consumption Commitment, available to customers that have got an MCA or an EA. So again, another thing that is more enterprise focused. The reason for that is it's probably going to benefit those companies. Well, it will benefit those companies consuming a lot of Azure. The premise behind it, and I'll make some numbers up, is you're consuming across the period of the agreement, you're consuming £10 million, because it is aimed at bigger spenders. As you've mentioned, we've seen the rise of more MACC conversations coming up, and the barrier is maybe being reduced a bit. But the premise is you're spending a lot in Azure, £10 million across the agreement. Microsoft come to you because you're spending a lot. You've done a very good job on optimizing the estate. You're maybe reserving everything, but you're still burning a lot of consumption. Your key customer to Microsoft, of course, because it's a lot of consumption. So they'll come to the table with this MACC agreement. You will commit to be with Microsoft for 3 years. It's good for them because it's a revenue commitment for a long period of time. In doing so, you will get a discount. What that discount is, to be honest, although I've said the amount has lowered a bit, we're not seeing very good discounts. If you think you're spending couple million a year, that's a lot to an individual customer. Is it a lot to Microsoft from a global perspective? Possibly not. So we don't see huge discounts on a few £1 million. So 10 million, you may see an okay discount. But basically, you're going to commit to using Azure for a 10, you will get a discount. But if we use a £10 million example, you're not committing to stay at £10 million. You're going to commit to £12 million or 14. So you need to commit to consume more than what you've got now. And by that period of time, and you will get a discount. It's a little bit of an oxymoron, really, because you need to hit that number of 12 million, but your rate's gone down. So it's actually harder to hit, I guess, if you think about that.
That's a good point.
But yeah, essentially, commitment of a time duration of 3 years and of an increase, and you'll see a small discount. But it's worth noting the increase in consumption you need to do far outweighs the discount that you're likely to see. You may see 2, 3, 4% discount, but you'll need to increase by maybe 20, 25%.
Right. So it's kind of one of those things, if you're going to be growing anyway, it makes sense to get it because a small discount is better than no discount.
Yes.
But it's not worthwhile getting involved to get the discount because you think, that won't benefit you overall. If you weren't planning on spending an extra 2 million, 4 million, you're just going to end up significantly worse off than if you'd stayed where you were.
Yes. So you've got to balance that. You've also got to balance what if I don't hit my commitment? And that's where it becomes quite interesting. You can work with a partner. We've got a managed service, an advisory service that can do the same thing. Shameless plug, but we have. But you can work with a partner to try and fill up the shortfall. So say you've got 6 months left and you're like you're forecasting to miss this commitment by £1 million. Well, really, your two options are quick. How can I spend an extra £1 million in 6 months? Or I'm going to have to go back to Microsoft, tell them this, and attempt to renegotiate when my term finishes. But the really important thing is that if you've committed to 2 million, sorry, if you committed to 2 million increase to 12 million as example, and you've only spent 11, you have lost £1 million essentially, which is why you need to quickly, how can I spend £1 million, or can I get a chance to renegotiate with Microsoft? Cannot guarantee anything on the renegotiation. They may well still say, well, you have lost that £1 million. It's sort of up to them. But the renegotiation, you had done a £12 million commitment. You're not renegotiating down to 10 or 11. You're renegotiating up to,
right.
If you didn't hit a £12 million commitment, how are you going to hit the new 14, £15 million commitment? So you could get into a cycle of just kicking the can down the road for a few years, but at some point you've made a commitment to spend and you haven't done. You've committed to Microsoft, we're giving you £15 million. You haven't hit it, so they'll take that 15 in some capacity. So if you're the right type of customer, you probably have committed to Azure as your one cloud, or you've got enough spend and you know that you've got more to come in and you are growing. It's a really good contract to take advantage of because you're already growing, you've committed to Azure, you might as well commit to Microsoft and see what you can get from it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not a simple case of, oh, we're using a bit of Azure, we get a discount, boom, sign it in half an hour, away we go. There's a real what's our strategy? Are we all in on Azure? Is it going to be growing at such a rate, or maybe are we thinking about, maybe another part of the business is thinking about switching to AWS, or and you need to make sure you know all that before you sign anything. But listening to you talk, then I did realize that this is actually one of the best names for anything Microsoft have ever come up with. It's like, actually, Microsoft Azure Consumption Commitment, it's like everything's there in the name, which is, they get a lot of stick for some of their product naming. So fair play to them.
Yep.
Is it everything that you spend in Azure? So kind of all your compute, all your your pay as you go software. Do you know if there are any kind of Azure charges that aren't included? And that's quite a big question. So I don't, things like networking and stuff. Do people need to watch out and make sure they understand what, not just how much they're spending in Azure, but also like what they're spending it on?
To my knowledge, most of what we'd class as pay-as-you-go style services are included, and RIs and saving plans and stuff like that. The area that customers should be careful about is there's a message at the moment from Microsoft, which is use the marketplace, buy third-party apps. Definitely, that's a very good way, because if you've committed to this extra £2 million and you've already got a Veeam contract bought from a different method, from a different reseller, for example, moving that and taking that budget from that reseller and putting it in your MACC commitment makes sense, because you've already paid for it with Microsoft, so you're just moving vendors across. The one thing to be careful about is that it's like not every vendor is equal. Not all vendors are equal. So you need to look at the partner of the vendor in question, and they need to be a managed partner, and they've got to be MACC eligible. So there's a bit of work they need to go through, but if that vendor can do so, and all the big names are that already because they hit the sales targets and they hit the requirements, but maybe one of these newer ones, these bleeding edge companies that have built something really cool in Azure, they might not be there yet. So that sort of spend wouldn't count. However, your big names like a Checkpoint, a Veeam, a Veritas, and any other sort of big name provider, Adobe, for example, they are MACC eligible. You can go on the Azure Marketplace, and I think it's got a little logo that says preferred solution. But you can always double check. Partners will know this. We can get a list of what is and isn't applicable, and that's something to look at. So the whole let's move our third-party vendors to this Azure invoice can make sense if you've got 6 months left and you're not going to get anywhere near that commitment. That could work. Just make sure, because some of the third-party vendors are not covered. And also what Microsoft are wanting to push for lots of benefits is it's a SaaS product. You go into the marketplace and you click order, and it orders it and it processes it on the Azure agreement. If you see the ones and it says contact us or price on application, that sort of thing, that will not come off the agreement. So you'll pay for it, but it's not coming off it, because it's technically the way to imagine it if you're a customer, because SaaS doesn't really mean anything, does it? Third-party SaaS, Microsoft definition. If you're the customer, if I click it, if the order processes through Azure and the portal that I'm already in, then that's third-party SaaS, and I've got a price for it. With these contact me for more information or price on application, you click it and it emails the vendor, and that transaction takes place out of Azure, therefore can't really be tracked, can it? So just bear that in mind if you're pushing for that.
Is it typically a bit cheaper to buy through the marketplace for these third-party vendors, or is that it kind of varies depending on the vendor?
That's a very good question. So we, again, another shameless plug, have sort of built a managed service around this where customers can say what they've got, what vendors they've got, and we will go and source the most optimum way of procuring that. Again, shameless plug, but companies should be looking into it, but there isn't an answer to that question because it's different per vendor. Take, for example, Barracuda. Barracuda have committed to a marketplace first strategy. So if you're given the option of Barracuda from the Azure Marketplace or Barracuda via distribution or direct, well, it would be distribution or marketplace, the marketplace is more advantageous for the partner. And if it's more advantageous for them, the likelihood is it's going to be more advantageous for the customer. So that is an example that Barracuda for the Azure Marketplace, if they've got a marketplace first strategy, it's going to be better. There's Exclaimer as well. We've sort of been talking to them recently. They've got a marketplace first strategy, so ordering them for the marketplace is probably going to be advantageous for customers. But so does the vendor have a marketplace strategy? Is the first question. The other question, and this is a hard one for customers to answer, which is probably why you need a partner, excuse me, is where is the application built or hosted, or what cloud hyperscaler, should we say, is the vendor more aligned to? So we take Veeam and we take Druva. One of those is more aligned to AWS. One of those is more aligned to Azure or Microsoft.
Right.
So presumably, one is cheaper through one marketplace than the other, because either those products are built on competitor hyperscalers and there may be some sort of arrangement like that, or there's different commercials. So while they may be available in both marketplaces, there may be behind the scenes agreements that make Veeam 2% cheaper through Azure and Druva 3% cheaper for AWS. So it does require a bit of research, but in my opinion, these marketplaces, whichever marketplace you go for, we've mentioned two, there's obviously more, they will, I'm not going to say they'll take over the world, but they will become better because both of them have some issues that they're not quite perfect yet. But when they do, and you're talking about two of the biggest companies globally, one of the two, if not both of them, will get it right. When they do, this, for example, from the channel, the partner perspective, what does that do to distribution? Some distributors will be affected by it, the non-value-added distributor, but then to the customer, the message for whatever marketplace is one-stop shop. One invoice. We enable an Azure subscription for a customer. They go in, they can buy all those vendors. They don't need to give us a separate PO for every single vendor. They don't need to go away and get quotes that are only valid for 2 days because it's in dollars and all that stuff. The price is on the screen. They click order it. They order it. We invoice them at the end of the month, along with the compute and everything. So from a customer perspective, it is very good because it's streamlining the supply chain.
I mean, any final thoughts on MACC agreements for everyone?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. The MACC agreement either works very well or it is terrible. I don't think there's going to be an in between. I think of the two, you know, if you ask me to pick which one is going to take off more, it will be the marketplace. I suppose the two are linked. But marketplace, that is a big push for Microsoft to get all these other third parties in. You can consume marketplace without a MACC agreement. You can just put marketplace products on your normal consumption, and you don't need a MACC to actually consume marketplace.
That's a good point.
It's worth noting, and partners have their own. You know, partners may get a better rate. You know, a platinum partner for Veeam probably gets a better rate than a silver partner for Veeam, for example. Yeah, of the two, I think marketplace is going to be the big disruptor, because it will challenge how customers buy, but it will challenge how partners buy and how vendors sell. We are seeing vendors going marketplace first. There'll be partners at some point that will just say, I don't need distribution because I've got my Microsoft agreement, and that's going to be interesting. So this will have such a ripple effect, you know, customer, partner, distributor. That'll have such an effect across the channel that it'll be very interesting to watch over the next couple of years.
So actually, one thing before we wrap up, one question. So you made a very good point that marketplace, you know, doesn't require a MACC. Can you buy marketplace on CSP?
Yes. So marketplace, I guess to help everyone, there's marketplace you could probably buy. You can buy on any agreement, but there's two things to consider. There's something called MPO, which was MPPO. That's now MPO. Which is still the same acronym. It's multi-partner private offer, and sits on basically that's going to come on an enterprise agreement. But in CSP, there's the partner can go to the vendor, and they can get an offer per customer. You know, a little bit like a deal reg in the old world. I've got this customer wants this, gives a discount for this customer, and they can do that. Or we can go and get a wholesale offer or blanket offer, which is an agreement with the vendor that they will give us X commercials for X amount of time. That allows the partner to productize it and then go to any customer and say, you wanted this product. Okay, well, this is the price, and this price is guaranteed until this time next year or whenever. So you've got two very different go-to markets. You know, you've got the big enterprise agreement that they can now do soon do the MPO agreement on. And you've got the CSP one, which is already there. We're just waiting for more vendors to turn up, and that could be quite an interesting route to market.
So as always, Nathan, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed that, and thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.
Cool. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.